Good morning. Good morning, and thank you for joining us. We are delighted to have you here with us at this iconic location. It was actually designed and architected with a mindset around constant innovation. So it's a very fitting forum for our discussion today. We'll spend some time and talk mostly about you, about customers, what we are hearing from customers, what customers are telling us matters most. At BMC, we call this the most important voice, the voice of the customer. We'll also talk a bit about markets, what's happening in markets as markets expand, evolve, change, transition. And notably, we'll talk about technology, what we are doing, why we are doing it, and how we have been innovating and investing and ensuring that our customers are first to succeed. It's been an interesting several months, and I've had the good fortune of spending time with customers and talking about what they're doing and why. And executives have been very eager to talk about their business. And many have talked about the importance of fundamentals. And most of you have lived through or are going through these fundamentals. Our company will be more efficient. We will be more productive. We will make sure we keep a keen eye on costs, and we are going to work on beating the competition. Well, all of those things held true 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, and they still matter today. And to be very open, we talk about the same things. But what's different, because it is different today than 18 months ago and 10 years ago and 20 years ago, are two phenomena that have changed. One of those is the market. Digitization, digital transformation is not simply a tagline. It's not hyperbole. It's real. The other is the customer has expectations they've never had before. So as I was flying in on the United flight, I was thinking about a New York-based company. And this New York-based company I'd known about because, although I think I've lost the accent, I am a native New Yorker. Apparently not. But this company was iconic as I was growing up in the 70s and 80s, and frankly, deservedly so. They built great products. They became more and more efficient. They did very well on the New York Stock Exchange. And they focused on their competition, and they continued to do so, and it worked. And it was a winning recipe. The problem was their market changed. Now you might say, well, their market got smaller or it shrunk. Their market expanded exponentially. Their market grew. Total available, total addressable market was growing, big. Because we all became users of the technology that they had been ascribing to us for decades. We just used it in a digital format. And while this company was focused on Fujitsu and Canon, Kodak missed the fact that the market changed forever. And I read 2 days ago that 80 times a day on average, we look at, touch, or have interaction with our mobile phone, as some of you are doing right now. I'm not offended. Tweeting, of course. That's right, I know. Dan keeps you up to date on all apps. So this is a major, major transition as the world went to digital photography. And many of us who were not photographers became photographers, but we did not buy cameras and film. Now, we all sort of know this intuitively, but it's a case study in digital transformation being real and substantive and tangible. But there's another phenomenon that's important, and that is the customer is expecting things that they had not before, as is the consumer. So for those of us coming up in the era when many of us did, what do you do? There was one of two answers. I work for a B2B or I work for a B2C. And that sort of satisfied those who were inquiring. But I would argue today, this has been inverted. It's not B2B, it's not B2C, it's C to B. The consumer and the customer is touching the business. And our customer's customer, your customer, has a different expectation. So I'm on the flight, and of course my mind is racing, and I'm thinking about really how lucky and how pleasant the experience is, and United Airlines gets me there safely, and the pilot knows what he and she were doing, and fortunately, it works. And I'm thinking about the role of these pilots, and its safety, and its efficiency, and it's making sure that everything is smooth. And I'm thinking about, God forbid, this pilot is actually stuck behind the engine of a combat jet, and they're at war, and things have changed. And I draw this parallel as businesses that are running as business as usual are more in peril than they realize. And we discuss this at BMC every day, and we've been discussing it with customers quite a bit. I also think it's important for us as we think about the customer to understand what's happening broadly in markets. And we are eager to understand the monetization of technology, but we're also eager to understand the transition of spend is very telling. And we start at the beginning or the top for us because we are focused on the enterprise. And today in the enterprise, roughly 1.1 trillion is spent in enterprise in IT around the world. It's a big number. And 70% of that number, about $700 billion, is spent on what we would today call core, largely on-prem. Mainframe, on-prem. As the CIO said to me, we have to keep the lights on before we do all the cool stuff. And that is still very substantive. But about 25% of that number, roughly $250 billion, is being spent on this transition, largely multi-cloud transition. And we'll come back to that. Now, the interesting thing about that component is that is growing at about 18-fold what the on-prem side and the core side are growing. So about an 18% CAGR. So by 2020, we expect that number in multi-cloud to be about 400 billion. It's an interesting transition as it relates to where things are going. And we think there are great opportunities associated with that, and we think there are risks that need to be addressed. It's also interesting because digital transformation technology spend this year, and that I would consider a subset of that broader component, is expected to be over $1 trillion. And there are many subsets to that that are growing at a rapid rate. For example, it was not anticipated that we would see in 2017 over $100 billion being spent in security, in IT. Now, we use this term IT, and maybe it's becoming more nebulous as well, because 50% of IT spend by 2020 is expected to be influenced by the BUs, by the business units. So it's possible that IT spend in the form of CIO ownership may not go up while IT spend in totality grows. It's a really interesting phenomenon. So these are good data points, and they all matter, but we don't use that in isolation at BMC to make decisions. We triangulate with what we call the most important voice, and that is the voice of the customer. And we spend a great deal of time asking informed questions to customers and prospects. We want to make sure we understand what matters most as it relates to your business needs. And after doing so hundreds and hundreds of times over the last several months, we came back with some feeding mechanisms that are helping us make decisions. But it's clear that customers are telling us they need help. Help me. I had a great meeting with a CIO not far from this very facility about 2 weeks ago. And we were talking about digital transformation and multi-cloud and AWS and Azure. And he said, you just need to understand, all of that is great. We're doing that. But if I'm really truthful, I don't even know where all my assets are. I don't know exactly what I have. And I think that's more pervasive than some realize. So customers are telling us they need help. Help me identify what I have. Help me take an inventory. I need a comprehensive view of all that I have. And this opportunity to discover IT assets is becoming ever more important as the needs and the expectations are going up. And in some cases, for some of you, your cost structure is not. We're also hearing from customers that they have no shortage of systems, no shortage of applications, no shortage of stuff. And the question is, how can you help me automate these workloads? How can you help me bring these disparate systems together and ultimately turn data into usable information? Every day we hear about more data. There is only more and more data coming into your organizations, more expectations from your customers, and it gets harder and harder to figure out how to utilize this data in a format that helps and keep it secure. And of course, we're hearing customers tell us, I need to transition from on-prem to multi-cloud. But don't let me do so without preemptively knowing how much it will cost. Because in some cases, folks have been surprised. And perhaps most salient and most importantly, please make sure it's secure. It must be secure. And that component, I think, is something that has become more pervasive and more of an issue than ever before. We've also talked a lot about what it means to be cognitive. What is AI? What's NLP? What's NLU? All this cool stuff with intelligent analytics and machine learning. It makes for great TV, great articles, great sci-fi, but is it in any way applicable to me or my business? And what customers are telling us is, give me a use case. Give me an actual example of this having some valid merit to my business. And that's been an important feeding mechanism for us too. Now, we get into other conversations with IT leaders specifically about a group that needs to be integrated in, but also needs to be treated separately, and that's development and DevOps. And how do we make sure we integrate DevOps into the discussion while speaking the language of DevOps? That balance is important. And notably, as we talk about this idea of customers touching business and the consumer having a vote, our customers have told us we need a great UX. We need a great UI. In fact, we need to digitize the user experience. And IT needs to be at the forefront of doing so. Help us. So there's a lot. We asked, we got answers, and many, many, many more. And these elements have helped inform strategic choices and decisions. BMC is growing, our business is growing, and we are growing our investment. Today, as Dan outlined, and you hear from Bill and a series of customers who have been great as partners, we are focusing more at this session about multi-cloud and digital transition. That is not at the expense of core needs and fundamentals that many of us have and many of you have in running your business. We are doing both. We have increased investment, and as we grow, we will continue to increase investment in solutions, in products, in services, and in partnerships. And we're really, really pleased with partners who are here with us, some of whom have never been with us before, and you can see the mindset of the expansion because that too came from our customers, which is, it's not a solo act, and we'll talk about that. I wanted to highlight a few things that we've been working on, and we'll go into much more detail over the course of the session. One of those that was announced just a week or two ago, we call Discovery Everywhere. And the idea is to hit that very first bullet, that pain point that I don't know where all of my IT assets are. Whether it's on-prem or in multi-cloud, we are covering the gamut. Comprehensive view. Now, I also want to be real clear that when we say multi-cloud, we don't mean a monolithic one-dimensional cloud. So our discovery solution is in an AWS environment. Thank you, AWS team who is here. In an Azure environment, in a Cloud Foundry environment, et cetera, et cetera. It's in your environment because customers said to us, we need to be able to see across multi-cloud options, in some cases your own cloud. And the interesting thing is, it's provided something else that turns out to be really important, and that is, it helps customers avoid blind spots. And that leads to a different discussion. And that emanation point of avoiding blind spots by knowing what you have came up recently with a few big customers who are in regulated environments and WannaCry hit. And unfortunately, I think it's fair to say another WannaCry may likely happen. And what we learned from this large regulated customer, who was very open and honest after going through this, perhaps while going through this, is that they weren't scanning their dev and test environments in their DCs. They said they were, but they really weren't. They were moving to multi-cloud, and we asked them how they secured the cloud. And the answer was, well, the apps team, they're on that. That's their job. But the applications team, no disrespect, we have great applications teams, they're not really in the mode of security. So there were real vulnerabilities. And in their case, not just protecting their own company, but protecting their customers. And so it's been quite a process. Now, I won't betray a confidence and talk specifically about who it is, but I will talk about what we're doing. And what we're doing is multi-tier threat remediation. And we look at this across the chasm, from servers to applications to database, all the way through to networks, and ultimately to cloud. And so we came out with a solution called SecOps Response because customers are transitioning to cloud with vulnerabilities and in some cases didn't know they had them. And this gap is dangerous. So this is a business for us that's growing exponentially for obvious reasons. We're also announcing something called SecOps Policy Service because constant monitoring of certain areas across this chasm is important and having policies in place matters. Now, there's a reasonable likelihood that you won't do it for everything, but certain things matter more than others. Payroll, customer information. We've learned about that, all of us, in the last month or so. And so this is something that we have been investing in. It's timely, and we're bringing to you. As we talk to customers about this whole idea of AI and cognitive capabilities and what it means, we've had this resounding theme in our heads, which is a use case is the differentiator. And so what we'll talk to you about today is what we are doing in partnership that we'll announce today with our solutions, with you, to have machine learning capabilities with something that's core to us, IT ticketing. And how do we find natural language understanding and natural language processing to help change the game for that process, which is so voluminous, and some of you know, hasn't changed that much in a long time. So we've done this in a way that no one else has. It's a first that we're really excited about. We talk about bringing disparate systems together. And it's a source of pride for BMC because we have an automation suite of tools that is second to none. And so many retailers and financial institutions and airlines have used our workload automation, our digital business automation, to tie disparate systems together. But it's starting to expand into other parts of the world and other industries. And about 4 months ago, I spent several hours with a really cool company, and they're called Malwarebytes. And it was interesting because I was starting to see what was happening with security. And I met these folks, and I was dressed like a middle-aged man, and they were very cool in their jeans, and they, dude, and I couldn't follow all of it, but I have to tell you this, they have a bar in their office, so I know I'm out of date, but I did not partake. Yeah, a lot of applause, apparently. Nonetheless, I asked them about their business, as I have a tendency to do, and poke at questions, and I'm very Socratic, and tell me why, and how did it form. And they said, it's really simple, man. We want the whole world to be malware-free. I said, that's it? They said, that's it. I said, that sounds like a big undertaking. Oh yeah, we're going to enable every customer of ours to have zero-day threat remediation. I said, I don't know what that means, but it sounds great. So on and on we went, and they talked about how they're using BMC automation. And every day, they are real-time scanning millions and millions of endpoints. And they kind of took me through this process. And they're running BMC automation on AWS. to manage ingestion, ETL, Hadoop processing. And they're doing this to detect 1.7 trillion data threats every day. They get these threats every day, trillion. And they're watching this on these massive geospatial maps. And they can measure the spread, acceleration, deceleration of these threats. And I said, well, explain how this all comes together. They said, that's Control M, that's you. I said, of course I knew that. That's, of course, what we do. And then they talked about a new solution that we are bringing to market called Workbench to do so the DevOps community with APIs can speak that same language. And you're going to see more and more from us on that front. And we'll talk about what jobs as code actually means and how we bring it together. And in that business, we're now actually working through managed file transfer to make sure that we're bridging across the ecosystem. So automation has become really, really important, and bringing these disparate systems together has been an absolute game changer as customers are in the mode of digital transformation and digital transition. It's also become really important that we understand the needs that customers have related to cost. So as we think about a customer transitioning to a cloud environment, for the most part, there were CIOs who were in the mode of ready, fire, aim, we're doing this. We are doing this. And I commend them, and I understand the mindset, and in many cases, it's for the right reasons. But we've learned from other CIOs that the cost was far in excess of what was anticipated for certain things. And not being able to preempt that cost has caused a tough conversation, which went something like this with one customer I talked to. CFO, yes, I told you it would be 100 grand for that transition to the cloud. Yes, it was actually $1 million. Gotta go. This has happened more than once. And because of that, our teams have worked really hard to develop something called cloud cost control. And we had a great interaction with a very large utility company, an energy company in Europe, in EMEA. And they're spending tens of millions of euros transitioning to cloud. And what they didn't realize was some of those applications that they were moving were more costly than they planned. And so they came back and said, cloud cost control is something we want to use and we want to try. And they're anticipating over 3 years saving upwards of 11 million euro. It is an important solution, and I want to make sure we get a chance to talk to you about it. So there's a lot on the docket and a lot the team wants to show. I want to hit one other area because I think it's really significant. And it gets back to this idea that as companies transition, the customer is at the forefront. And defining who the customer is really important. So we call this digital workplace broadly. But we want to make it tangible. And a great example is an automaker called BMW. They have 60,000 employees globally. And they have put in the hands of each of those 60,000 employees our solution on a mobile device, very easy, and they now have IT capabilities in the hands of their workforce. Notably, digital natives who have come into the workforce, not eager to make a call to IT, not eager to deal with people that they don't have to talk to, and they've seen an 80% reduction in calls to their service center. It's been phenomenal. And they're doing what they set out to do, sell more BMWs more quickly, globally. So that's a cool story, and it resonates, and we're proud, and they certainly have appreciated that. We also had BMC services on site to make sure we were educating them to teach the teachers and train the trainers to get everybody equipped on those basic functions. But something else has happened that's a real incredible phenomenon is the customer's customer, the dealers, are now using the same technology in the palm of their hands. And they're doing the same at their service centers. And now those service centers and those dealerships are having that interaction with their customers. And it's become mass proliferation. Another example is a company we talked to yesterday and met with who now has 250,000 of their employees, one of the largest banks in the world, doing the same, on the same journey. And they're seeing similar results. CSAT scores, customer sat going up, IT costs going down. So you can sense excitement from BMC because of what we're doing, but it's not in isolation, and it's not by chance. We are informed by the voice of the customer. We are informed by what we are hearing from you. That is a constant. That should not be a point in time. We encourage you, as much as we're eager to show you today and share with you all that we're doing, and a series of industry firsts we're excited about, to take time to tell us. That makes sense. We're missing that. We need more of this. We look forward to it. I am really, really excited about what's happening in the market and our position in helping you transition. I'm equally as excited to say this is a constant. We are going to continue on this path, and we really look forward to a great session. Thank you so much for being here in New York.